Here we go. Episode 272 of Control Talk Now, your smart buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending June 24th, 2018. That's right, folks. We're almost halfway through the year. We had the longest night of the summer. I think it was last night, the longest day, I should say. And hey, but big question everybody's asking is, what did the man, the myth, the legend do with this big mind on the longest day of the year? So without further ado, your co-host and mine, the one, the only, Kenny Smyers, the control man from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kenny, welcome to the show, Big Dog.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. It's always great to be here. 272. Keep churning along. Summer solstice. Yeah, I actually saw that the headlines was Stonehenge. They had an enormous gathering there again.
Did they really?
And they had some real interesting looking characters, you know.
Yeah, all those druids and stuff like that.
They were all wearing druid costumes and whatever. And I wondered if they were like, you know, how serious they were, but I'm pretty sure they're serious. So hope they had a good time. But yeah, that was an interesting day. And we're not in Kansas, are we today, Eric?
We're not in Kansas. I'm actually on vacation, Kenny, and up here at a place called Lake Rayburn in North Georgia. This was my family's home as we were growing up. So I have many, many, many fond memories of spending summers up here with my brother and our friends. And you know, kind of an ironic situation. One of our best friends was a family called the Marshalls, right? John and Bill Marshall. And their dad was Jack Marshall, who was president of Honeywell, the commercial division for many, many years. And I can remember sitting on this very porch listening to my dad and Jack Marshall talk about Honeywell pneumatics, and my dad saying, hey, we'd really like to handle Honeywell pneumatics, and Jack Marshall saying, hell will freeze over before Honeywell ever sells pneumatics through distribution. So.
Oh, little Mr. Marshall, no, but tell me something. Did you get your first kiss in and around that area somewhere on a boat or something?
I can't talk, man. I can't.
You neither confirm nor deny, huh?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm still got warning posters up here for me, so I have to sort of be in stealth mode when I'm up here. So enough said, right, about that. But well, it's a beautiful, beautiful lake, Kenny, and you know, I've got my family up here, so it is like stepping back in time, probably a little bit like, you know, the thing you saw in Stonehenge. Really great people up here. It's a beautiful, beautiful, lush area. And we went to a little town last night called Tiger, Georgia, population maybe 35, and they have the Tiger Drive-In. So I got to take my family to the Tiger Drive-In last night. I had never been there. So Evie and Axel and Anna, and we packed into the car, went up there. It was a great experience. They got a big playground, so the kids get to play the whole time while you're watching the movies. And they actually have these little things that light up, different colors. They put those around your kids, so if they're out playing, you can sort of track them because you can't see them because it's dark.
Sure.
But I tell you what, Kenny, it was an awesome time, and it was good times there. So one day soon, to get you and Miss Reed up here to Lake Rayburn. I know we've had you over to the house in Alabama before, which is a different sort of experience, right?
Like Wobido. No, I always
Wadawi.
That's what I said, Wadawi.
Yeah.
Listen, I screwed that up 40 out of 40 times. At least I'm consistent on that. That's just a tough one for me.
So they actually call it Weedowie over there. That's how the locals say
Wadawi. Lake Wadawi. I got it.
We call it Wadawi. They call it Weedowie. So, but dude, I tell you what, it's kind of like you get in vacation mode after about 3 days, man. You know, the engine shut down a little bit and you start getting perspective and stuff like that. And, you know, I think we're probably gonna have a little bit of a short show this week because I have to go get my wife and kids. I made them leave the house. They were none too happy about being rousted out this morning after the late night at the Tiger Drive-In, but I think we're gonna go for a hike later on. But you know, perspective, buddy. You know, it's sort of like I'm sort of anxious to get in a little dialogue here with you about controls because my controls hat's been off for a couple of days.
Well, there's been a lot going on. I tell you, there's one thing for sure is that the inflection point conversations we've had and pivot points, and I love all that stuff. When you have a tipping point, some kind of a intersection where we were doing things this way for so long, and we're finally seeing it. And it's kind of interesting that you mentioned Mr. Marshall's comment about Honeywell. It'll be a cold day in hell when they sell pneumatics to distributors. But that's the kind of situation we're at now. We're seeing the actual the realization of how the large data cloud providers, the big people like Microsoft Azure. I rewatched that Realcomm IBCon, and I went through the pavilion, the Microsoft partners, and listened to the real serious intent of these major corporations. We see collaboration at that level. That's going to really and truly cause some rapidity. And then you see the development of Siemens acquiring J2 Innovations, and the Project Haystack, their most recent connections article, the spring version, and how they talked about all the big players they got there. And then you had Niagara 4, Kevin Smith up there at the Niagara Summit saying how they were all in on haystack tagging and semantics. And so we're on one hand, we were watching this, different companies were developing their specifications, their spec writer, their base spec, their BAS spec, building management spec. So probably like 3 different manufacturers. We were looking, seeing some of the hard work they were doing to upgrade and update their specs. And the common issue there was none of them even mentioned the word haystack. I remember the first thing I do when I get a document like that is Control F and then type in whatever words I'm interested in finding in there. And lo and behold, nary a reference of a haystack. But this time next year, we'll see probably it in every major manufacturer's specification, because it's going to become the norm, the standard. And we are really going to see these efforts of these major cloud providers going after that data having a real opportunity now as we prepare our networks and translate all our different semantics into one common platform or one common, semantic protocol, basically, of haystack tagging. We're going to see incredible applications that are really going to fulfill some of these things that we think is going to happen. They are going to happen.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, Kenny, because, and we've got this video, I just hadn't had a chance to edit it yet, where you basically went to the Microsoft Azure pavilion, like you said, and you interviewed 4 or 5 different people, one of them being Honeywell, that are actually using Microsoft Azure. I guess platform is probably not the right word, but I don't even know what you would describe it as, but it seems like Microsoft, I think it's becoming clear how maybe they're going to enter our space, right? And what would you call Azure? Is it a platform? Is it, a cloud?
It's a framework.
Framework.
It's a service in the cloud. So basically what they have is enormous capabilities. They've got the ability to process, there's probably 5 or 6 of them. There's what IBM Blue, you've got Amazon's got their version, you got Microsoft, who else would have one too? But I'm sure, Intel's got a version of it, Dell's got a version of it.
But so that's not going to necessarily have a negative effect on any of the people we know, like Tritium or whatever. In other words, they're just going to take whatever platform you're using at the building level, and they're vying for being able to take that up to the cloud and do analytics and stuff like that there. Or are we vulnerable?
I think everything has it's a 2-sided sword every time that you see technology. If you get in the way of the cutting edge side of it, then you're vulnerable and you're gonna suffer the consequences. If you get on the back side of it and follow the cut of the sword and take the new technology and get on board it and find a way to, like Rolling Oaks said to us once upon a time, you got to go laterally here in order to get to the next technology island that you need to be on that's going to prevail. So I think if you're going to ignore it, or if you're a competitor to these people, for service wise, I think you could be in trouble. But I think what they're going to do is that we're going to have a smarter world. We're going to actually see that smart grid. We're going to see a lot of the things that we right now, have difficulty groping with, or grasping, to include autonomous vehicles. And we're seeing stuff that they say in 2020 in Los Angeles, you are going to have autonomous, helicopters, or heliports or helitransport vehicles taking people from point A to point B pretty routinely. So right now it's a wow factor. We're all like, yeah, sure, show me. But meanwhile, we all know in the back of our minds that there's a lot to this stuff. Ever since I saw SpaceX land 2 rockets after they took the the space vehicles, the rockets up into space, and they jettisoned and then returned back to Earth onto their launch pads. The world hasn't been the same since that day. To me, I mean, anything's
Well,
possible.
no, I think we're just starting with the wow factors. To your point, I think we're gonna get more and more wow factors. But again, it sort of gets back to, so Azure. Like, so for example, I've been seeing all these ads on TV. Sign up for Microsoft Azure. I think they're targeting the individuals as well. But you got to think that Microsoft probably has their own tagging system and stuff like that. So it kind of makes you wonder. Will Microsoft adopt Haystack, or will our industry adopt whatever tagging they're already using?
Well, I'll tell you what. Just to get to your point, I just Googled Azure, right? And who do you think comes up first but IBM, that outperforms their competition with a cloud that outdelivers anybody else's, So to your point, what is it? It's a service. It's a cloud service. So Microsoft Azure, create your own free account today. So this is basically leveled at the individual consumer. So I can go one-on-one with Microsoft Azure right here on the internet. And it's a cloud computing service created by Microsoft for building, testing, deploying, and managing applications and services through a global network of Microsoft managed data centers. So that's what we're seeing. So, basically a company can take advantage of Microsoft's global deployment and put an app in and then get it around the world.
Wow, it's interesting. I remember back, you mentioned something about, the global, the whole connecting the globe together. I remember back, Buckminster Fuller was, the teacher of one of the guys I study a lot with, Marshall Thurber. And there's a whole group. There's a guy, Peter, I forget his last name, and he was one of Marshall's students. And back in the 80s, he was talking about, we have so much energy, and he was advocating trying to get governments together so that when it's daylight in the U.S., it's dark someplace else, but being able to share energy on a grid, which apparently is very, very doable. So, it could reduce the energy footprint tremendously if we just, did a global sort of smart grid sharing. And you mentioned smart grid. So I don't know if we'll ever get there or not, because I think at the end of the day, selling energy is still business for people, big business. But it sure seems like it opens up a lot of possibilities. I mean, when we think about the woes of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's so many people that can fix it. But it's a little bit like, you and I have talked about in the past, fixing one problem might create huge other problems. So in other words, if they, 15 years ago overnight came out with a smart car well, electric car even, that would drive, 1,000 miles on one charge, it would totally tank the oil industry, right? And that would send the whole world into financial chaos. So I wonder how many, solutions are already sort of baked in the can and ready to go, and they're just trying to figure out how to make it work from an economic standpoint.
Oh, absolutely. And that is, again, the consequences you're talking about are not maybe always environmental; they're economic.
Yeah.
Because we've seen the different revolutions, and we saw how the different inventions changed everything. I mean, I still get a kick out of us when we were in Scotland, and when they were in the Age of Enlightenment, that 100 years period when Scotland was probably the cradle of civilization as far as intellectual, thought. They
Right.
did Adam Smith with economics. It just goes on and on. The sciences, the economic, the people like Carnegie came from Scotland. I mean, so this produced all these people, and then we were on a tour, and the lady explained to us why that probably happened was that the church at the time believed that making kids go to school and learn how to read and write would make them read the Bible and therefore be better, citizens and better,
More easily manipulated.
spiritually, whatever. And what it kind of backfired, or
Yeah.
3 or 4 firings off, because they learned how to speak their piece and read and write, and they weren't reading the Bible. They were reading political thought, and they were reading economic thought.
Right.
They were reading about the new world, and they were motivated to make an impact. So all the artists, all the writers, and everybody that had learned by the benefit of that one ideal to make them better religious people, and be able to participate with the services better, had a consequence. One of those, what do you call that when you come in this way and go out that way?
Unintended consequence.
Yeah, no, but you call it something else. It's a procession, I believe it's the term you
processional effect. Yeah.
With Marshall.
Another Buckminster Fuller sort of thing.
Right.
Basically, the processional effect is is that you sort of set a goal. So like you're going to go from point A to point B, which is, straight ahead.
Hmm.
And then the universe sort of has a use for you. And you typically forward proof you go 90 degrees off is usually where you wind up. And the example he gave was that the bee goes for the honey, right?
Hmm.
But the universal plan or the processional effect is that the bee fertilizes the
Pollinates. Yeah.
flowers, right?
Yep.
Pollinates the flowers. So
Yeah, well, I mean, so we're seeing some of that kind of stuff, but just going back to it. So I think you said what was the impact going to be? I think we're seeing these impacts happening on different levels, in different dimensions, and different things. If it happened overnight, you're right, it would be a tsunami, and it would probably disrupt stock markets and everything else. So it's not going to go. It's not magic. It's not going to be like a cloud that just sweeps into town and changes, the color of the buildings from red to white or something. It's going to be, a customer by customer, an account by account, just like anybody else. If you're
well, if you
working on
got
this,
your eyes open, you can see it coming, right?
well, I think you
Yeah,
can participate when it suits you, when it
right.
meets your, it's scalable. That
Right.
was one
But, but,
thing we.
but my point being, you have to pay attention.
Oh,
You
sure.
have to be paying attention to what's going on now because we are in the midst of change. And like you're saying, if you're paying attention, you can participate. If you're not, things are going to change, and you can wake up one day and everything could be different. Again, I'm sort of cycling back around to, and you might have already answered it, Kenny. So, at our level, we pay at the Jace level, for example, or whatever. It seems like maybe the Jace is vulnerable to J2 and Siemens. Maybe those guys are going to compete. But are you seeing that like the Microsoft Azures and the Amazon platforms and all are just going to be a bolt on that the data is going to be shipped up there? So a user would still use a Jace or whatever the way we're doing it, and then they would just send the information up to Azure or whatever, and that would do the cloud service portion of it. Or are you seeing the possibility that Microsoft or Amazon might have some nefarious sort of goals in mind, and they would go, why do you need this piece of middleware when you can just go straight to us?
Well, again, it's not magic. Pushing air and water, using a couple of references. Scotty Cochran made that comment there, and Ken St. Clair said that you can't provide a software to actually control equipment that if you lose the network, the equipment shuts down. So you're
So
going
you
to
got to have a
always need
redundancy. Yeah,
controllers. Yeah, you got to
yeah,
have something to supervise the operation in the event of a catastrophic network failure,
right,
or lightning or whatever disaster can happen. You still need this thing to work, and you need to provide locally the assurance that can happen. It's going to take a controller, it's going to take backup
right.
power, and so that's never going to go away until they come up with some kind of a, like, and you were talking about the distribution of power on the grid and everything. I mean, think what Tesla was contemplating back, 100 years ago, when he was going to send up electricity into the atmosphere and
Yeah,
bounce it off the ionosphere,
right, right.
and send it, and make it available like a giant plug, or a giant wire, a wireless wire of energy that you could harness. And so what's coming is going to definitely make us feel dumb and look dumb 100 years from now. Yeah.
Well, and then again, maybe it'll just change the face of because if you look at the Jace to me is like a software. It is the thing that sort of controls that network, and we keep hearing edge to enterprise and all. So maybe the face of the Jace will change. So maybe Linkspring and some of these people are coming out with I won't say a dumbed down version, but maybe a less powerful version. Maybe you won't need as much power on the Jace as you do now if you're sending the
Well,
stuff
see,
up. And
with the Jace, what it did, and it did two things that, and again, I don't dare consider myself the total expert on this, but my experience, so I can speak with my experience. What the Jace did was it put things on the web. Everybody
yeah,
had a software, management tool that basically ran your components, from the front end down to the server control, or to the supervisory controls, down to the field level controls, to the unitary controls. So the big thing was getting it up into the internet, and that's what the Jace did. It web enabled our building automation system. Plus, it normalized the languages. Remember back in the old days when they used to show the objects, they would proxy the point. So the point came in here as this proprietary, string of alphanumerics or whatever, and then the Jace software would put an object-based proxy to it, and that point now became manageable throughout the rest of the application. So
Maybe the first digital twin, so to speak.
so they normally, well, I mean, I was that proxy thing that turned me on. I thought that was again remarkable. I thought that what an ingenious way to solve a problem.
Right.
I'll fix you in your proprietary protocol. Watch this.
Yeah, no,
And
I
you know,
got you.
and there were other people that did that. I mean, Richard Zeta was his name, Ed Richards.
Yeah,
Used to be able to talk on a soapbox and just wow people because they did something very similar. And so with the front ends and is Niagara framework and the Siemens version, DeSigo, and you have Onicon. You have different people out there with frameworks. Emerson has a massive framework that allows these applications to come on and they can run industrial automations and stuff. But what Niagara did now was they came out with such an enormous product and got such an advantage leadership. I mean, they've led the integration world for since we got involved.
at least
Like you
at
said,
least 20 years, huh?
Ed Merwin was the prophet. He came
The
in and said,
Godfather, baby.
you guys are going to need this. You're going to
Yeah,
want this, and it's going to
yeah,
come. Someday you're going to ring. It's going to occur to you. You got to call me on this number, and let's get started. But because he took such a leadership role, it's almost like some of the great transitions we saw with Belimo with direct coupled actuators. They would really have to do a lot of bad things in a row to lose that leadership that they have in, direct coupled actuators and valving. Because they
right,
spent such a great amount of their resources were dedicated to doing something right and doing it, maybe the best in the world. Now, everybody else is kind of, copying them, or they've set the standard. So you got to have a 5-year warranty. You got to be able to do this, that, and the other, and the MFT where you can basically program the signal to the actuators. Ingenious. I mean,
right.
it's just putting all that good stuff into a very down to earth accessible thing, so a technician can do it, and you don't have these lousy things that used to happen when you ordered something with lawn and you wanted it back net and you're just absolutely screwed.
Well, I think I'm really becoming and we kind of gloomed and doomed it a lot there for a while, and I'm kind of coming to the opinion that that there's always going to be business for you if you're paying attention, right? And
Yeah.
and meaning that as long as you're doing a good job and taking care of your customers, and I'll use a couple of examples. I mean, obviously the drive-in, right? I mean, apparently every weekend the drive-in is filled up. It's a unique experience, right? Um, I've gotten where I'm buying albums again. They've taken the albums and they've made them thicker. They're 180 grams now. So the sound on vinyl records now is so much better than anything you can get digitally, right? And you may or may not care about that, but my point being is a resurgence there. And they charge more. The album's like $50 a piece, but you pick and choose your albums, but the experience you get from it is absolutely incredible. And I think we're gonna see that translate more and more to our business, right? Our business models. I think that you cannot replace the local support with a distributor. If the distributor's doing their job. Now, your growth expectations might be different. I mean, the years of year-over-year double-digit growth for either manufacturers or distributors, I think those days might be changing. And I know in our company, our philosophy now is we're focused less on growth and more on creating value and more on taking care of our customers, knowing our customers are really taking care of them, giving them an experience that can't be replicated someplace else easily. So I just think I think maybe instead of being like in the age of enlightenment, I think we're really in the age where you really have to sort of rethink what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it. And I think you really have to think about how you're going to recreate value. And but that's something we talk a lot about, Kenny. And I know we got some posts to get to. So I mean, like I said, I'm in a philosophical mood. I'm up here in the mountains, and I'm feeling like Grizzly Adams or something like that. So I might go wrestle a bear or a crocodile after we get off of this.
Well,
But it's
let,
just
let,
giving
me-
me
let, me-
pause to think a little bit.
let me know how that goes, that bear wrestling thing. I
Yeah.
would recommend against it.
You would? Okay. All right. All right. That's the voice of wisdom speaking. That's why he's the man, the myth, the legend,
No,
and
that's because
why I've
I
been
tell you,
married for.
I saw an advertise, or I saw something on television last night, and you mentioned this. We're talking about synchronicity and all this stuff popping up with the drive-ins and everything.
Yeah.
I saw a defense against bears. How to free yourself from a bear, and I'm thinking, okay, what unfortunate person got confronted with a bear, and now he's going to actually try to do this stuff, and it's a matter of survival, and it's just
Well,
Your
there's
ticket's punched, baby. You're gone. You could
yeah,
do this, that, and the other bear.
well,
One swat,
well,
and you're out.
but it depends on the type of bear from what I'm, and I might, obviously I need to, I've boned up on this a little bit because we're up in the mountains and there are bears around here. And I think if it's a brown bear, you just make noise and puff yourself up and don't get too close to them. If it's a black bear, you do something else. And one of them you look in the eye and the other one you don't. I think if you look the black bear in the eye, you're toast because they'll take that as a sign of aggression. Maybe the brown bear you look in the eye. I don't know. And then there's the
Well,
panther and the cougar, what you do with them. So
well,
I
I'll
don't
tell
know,
you.
man. The city's sounding better. Maybe I need to get back home.
Well, I'd have your little defensive mechanism there nearby with
Anybody
a
got an
little shots in it.
AK-47 I can borrow?
Hey, listen, I'm not an outdoorsman, but I don't know how I was watching it, but it was like you said, black bears typically leave you alone if they're after food or whatever, and you don't go over there and try to shake them loose. You let them have their fun
Yeah.
and let them go because they're not after you. But the other ones are, territorial, predatorial, and geez, Mary, what a ferocious animal a bear is.
Yeah, right. And sort of bringing it back to our world, it's like if you're going to be in control, you got to know what you're trying to control and their strengths and weaknesses. So, all right, buddy.
Well, so I think the Jace will never go away all the way. I think
So the Jace is like a black bear then?
Well, when you're talking about Link Spring and some of the things that they've done, that ported Niagara is what's really clever. They've made it, they've put the capability, some big league capability in a very small controller to make it price worthy. So the price points are much more, the Niagara folks are coming out with a 10-point controller too. That's going to be, it's going to have its share because that's what it's all about. And then you got the Easy IO that's really pushing that. In fact, they're one of our posts is that the concept of wireless is really growing too. Our area of the country, Western Pennsylvania and West Virginia, is not really slow to adopt things. It's just they don't really. It's like you said, there's a lot of economics tied to certain systems and certain ways of doing business, and they're not easily to undo because you've got all these business chains that have been entrenched and have been so successful, and there's no real compelling reason to change those just so you can say I did it too, or you're going to eat this new technology whether you like it or not, like it's some kind of a thing on a spoon that you're watching a movie, for your what was that famous poster or the thing that they would pour in a bottle and make a kid drink it if he did something wrong? Was that nasty stuff?
Castor oil, baby.
Castor oil, yeah. See, so
Well,
people.
hey,
People
speaking of castor oil real quick, go ahead. Hang on. Speaking of castor oil, I'm talking about ported Niagara. Mark Peacock, where are you? We know you listen to this show because you make comments. You talk about a guy that could probably comment on this whole thing because it seems like Linkspring, the company that Mark works with, is really taking a stance on this and is sort of taking advantage of how to utilize Niagara. So Mark Peacock, wherever you are, come on the show, buddy.
There you go.
If you don't, we're going to get Scott Mensch on to talk about how much better his solution is than yours.
Hunter,
because he'll do it. All right, buddy. Let's get to the first post, brother.
No religion, no politics, and no manufacturer wars.
All right, so we're about 30 minutes into the show, and we got the first Kenny goes, uh-oh. So there we go. All right, buddy. Well, let's get to some of the posts this week. What do you say, big dog?
Okay, well, the first one we had was, we actually had some really good posts this week. We had Niagara Tritium Technical Bulletin, Niagara AX 3.8 update, and Niagara 4.4 update 1. So as we keep saying, about technology and about the software maintenance agreements, remember that was like kind of a, it left a lot of people kind of, curious why they had to have it. And this is a perfect example why you have to have it. So, you don't even think twice about upgrading your Windows, and you don't, all the other stuff, Adobe. Just seems like once a day I'm updating something, and of course the Niagara updates are critical because they involve the fixes for important vulnerabilities, vulnerability mitigation for cybersecurity protection of Niagara AX systems, including but not limited to an important revision of Java virtual machine that fixes critical security vulnerabilities. The Niagara 4.4, same thing. Number of fixes and important vulnerability mitigations for cybersecurity protection in Niagara 4 systems, including but not limited to the Java virtual machine that fixes critical security vulnerabilities. So this patch for the Jace 8000 systems permanently fixes the Wi-Fi protected access to the WPA2 vulnerability described in an earlier technical bulletin. So it's a very important post, and all the people out there that have responsibilities for protecting their customers' networks and their own networks, please take a look at that. We've got the hot buttons to take you onto Niagara site where you'll have to sign on and download the take appropriate actions.
Very, very cool, Kenny. Very, very cool. All right, Big Dog, what we have up next?
Well, next up is you with Mr.
Me?
Ryan Sen and Charles
Oh, yeah.
Pelletier, who's the global product manager. But that was a very fun post, but a really, really significant post. And I'm going to get your thoughts first, and then I'm going to talk about the technical aspects of it.
Well, it's Ryan Sen is just an awesome guy from Distech. A lot of fun. If you've ever been to a Control Trends Awards, man, these guys they work hard, they play hard. They're a great group of guys to be around, and they're platinum sponsors again. So thank you, Ryan, for that. I mean, love companies like that. When you mentioned you guys be interested, in, yeah, we're in. So they're great. But Distech, it was bought by Acuity Brands. I think we all know that. Kenny and I have reported that in the past. And I think what they're really dialed into, Kenny, is what we've talked a lot about on the show, the 330, 300, or the 10X, 100X, 1000X sort of rule, which real estate people are very, very aware of. And basically, in a nutshell, it's, you're spending roughly $3 per square foot on energy. You're spending $30 a square foot to build the space and heat it and cool it and all the equipment that goes in it. And you're spending $300 roughly per square foot for employees that occupy that space. So if you can effectuate that 300 or that higher number by having people be more efficient, be happier in the space, be more productive, less being away from work, that's a huge, huge win, and it allows your real estate people to be more competitive. And I think Distech is really, really dialed into that, because obviously lighting has a lot to do psychologically with how people perform, and I think they're combining those together in a really unique way. And that was part of what the video was about, showing some of their products and how they're doing that.
Well, yeah, the video does it all, because first we have a little bit of camaraderie there between you, Ryan, and Charles, but then we see the actual demonstration of this new Unitouch application, which truly gives occupants total control of their space. It gives you the ability to use Bluetooth to connect your mobile device to control your temperature settings, your lighting and dimming preferences, your fan speed control, your CO2 reading, so you can take a look and see if you're feeling sleepy and tired. Maybe it's because you're getting too much CO2 or too high of a CO2 level and you want to force some fresh air in there. Blind positioning, and then scene selection. So the scene selection, as you were saying about the importance of lighting in total, the criticality now with lighting now in schools, that we're seeing specifications now that come out where they have requirements to be able to go to 8 different scenes in a period of 8 hours in a school session. Classroom has to be able to change the lights from this to this, this to this, this to this, this to this. So that requires some technology. That requires some lighting. That's LED probably, more than likely. But more importantly is that you have to meet requirements and standards now with lighting. So that they know that people, in hospitals, for instance, now the recovery, the recuperation, because of the way people, time is a construct. We made it up. And there's some great studies with German engineering and whatever, and mines where they had disasters where the only person that died after they were physically past their limits was the guy that had the clock, and it was given the information. They were asking how long is it, because they figured out how much oxygen they had for 20 people, and they had maybe 20 hours, and he misinformed them and said they had 12. Meanwhile, they were in like 36. But because they took that in their mind, and their mind made it work through their bodies, and they were able to survive. The only guy that passed away was the gentleman who had the watch and actually engineered the whole thing. It's a credible story. But the point being with the circadian rhythms is that patients now can be, thinking that a whole day went by and it's only been 8 hours instead of 12. So they feel as though they're experiencing another day. They're getting better, faster, quicker. And the impacts we're just touching the iceberg on it. We're really and truly got more to learn and more metrics to share.
Well, so let me get this straight, Kenny. In other words, if they'd hit this technology back when I was in school, I might have been able to go to Harvard or something like that.
No doubt. Because it would have, instead of giving you that nasty little pill they gave you after lunch, settle you down, that slowed your thought process and made you stutter. No, but you think about some of the things they give kids in schools,
right,
Ritalin and all this other good stuff.
So much better that this is so holistic, the approach to it. And I think it's really cool. I think we're just at the beginning of seeing this, like you say, it's showing up in the specifications. I think what Distech and Acuity do really well is they bundled it together so you can get a bundled solution. We know we got people like Bill Duckelberger, Blue Ridge Technologies. They do very similar things, and that they can bolt onto anybody's system. But I think that I think the big pushback or blowback, the problems most people are having is it's still in a different part of the specification, which makes it difficult to make sure you get it right. So you got lighting people that are not necessarily control people, and you got control people that are not necessarily lighting people, and somebody needs to take responsibility for that. So
Plus, it's expensive. I mean, it's not cheap. It
yeah,
requires an investment, and I think that's where the ROI and everybody, like you were saying about change and about things happening real quick. If people wanted to do this, they could do it. School districts, school boards could vote and whatever, and they could allocate money, monies to get this done. So it's just a matter of importance. So you probably need codes and standards and things to happen. So that even though it would go through our different divisions and whatever, and they'd fight over who's going to be in charge of it because you have competitive interests, self-interest there. But, when you think about schools now, and you made a good point, I'm disappointed sometimes when I think about our schools. I mean, they did the best they could, I think, but there was no leadership. There was no integration of efforts and energies and
well, there's no
ideas.
competition, right?
Well,
So
we
I
just got
mean,
to get to,
if you could pick which school you wanted to go to,
mhm,
and I mean, I think you can to a degree, and maybe it's more so now, but back then it was just, hey, shut up and put up. It's like, here's the
sure.
deal.
I
So
remember coming home with a little piece of paper that my parents had to sign. They were allowed to use corporal punishment. So that if we did act a little bit, out of hand, we get a good whack, and
yeah,
then you
they use
really misbehave.
electric probes on us.
But that's what I'm saying. So when I think, with the methods that we are improving, but we're still not going fast enough, but the disparity then of these technologies could actually become an issue that, where certain school districts can't afford it and certain school districts can't afford it. And could those kids actually be, enjoying a benefit that their classmates in another part of the state or another part of the city are not enjoying because they don't have the budget?
But I think where you're gonna see it really get adopted quicker is going to be commercial real estate, because again, at the end of the
Sure.
day, they're all they're all competing with each other, and this is again something that I think Distech and Acuity does really well is they've got the studies that show. But if I'm marketing a building, right, and we heard the first term, the well building, several years ago out in California, where all the snacks were healthy, the water is purified, the lights are just right. But I mean, so I think people get more and more dialed into, hey, your people are going to be more productive in our space than any other space, and here's why. I think that's going to drive that technology, and then I think it's also going to, it's going to further document the validity of that, and then I think the politicians are going to, the school boards are going, they're going to do it. We're going to demand it, right?
Mm.
So
Well,
yeah,
and the one
I
thing,
think it's,
the final statement on that, the Distech and what we saw with the Unitouch was that it's on your smartphone. I mean,
yeah.
I've never seen that many features in the application being in such scale. That's where the HTML5 really comes in handy, because no matter what smart device you were looking at, you still got that really perfected display where you could
Right.
actually move. The adjustment was a slide to change your dimmer switch on your lights from real dark or from dark to light, whatever. I just really well done. So it's a
So here's a question for you, Kenny, because I think anytime when everybody adopts something a certain way, there's always an opportunity to create a niche market going opposite that. How would you sell against a smartphone, or what would you create?
what do you mean for the user interface?
No, just in general. If your job, you're at a big company, and here you go, Kenny. We think the smartphone market's saturated. Come up with something different.
Well, let's go with the Android.
No, that's still a smartphone.
You said iPhone.
I don't know. I got to tell you, man, because my phone, and this is the thing that pisses me off. I get probably 100 calls a day, and 99 of them are for some damn machine. You know that I'm wanted in like 10 states. Uh, don't hang up. You are wanted for a felony. You will be arrested and shot on sight unless you return our phone call immediately. The IRS is hunting you down. I mean, it's nuts. So you got that going on, right? And then I get 1,000 emails a day, and like 2 of them are from actually legitimate people. Everything else, it's like I'm
Well,
old.
I tell you what, you hit the, I mean, it's a very good point. I didn't realize you were so serious. I thought you were kind of kidding around there, but I think what Cochrane Supply came up with, the Raven,
Yeah,
where you put a filter on a filter. In
right.
other words, you now got to go into, well, emails used to be, awesome, and text messages used to be awesome. But since the mass marketing, regimes and all these other, guys out there that are less than noble business people, to screen them, you gotta have another layer so that you can now excise your critical information that you want to know for the time you want to know it. The whole idea that it's geofencing. So if you're at work, instead of getting 50 emails, and I do too. The ones that I want to know about could be from my family, from my bank. So I could identify critical parties, critical notifications, and they become now the real bona fides that I pay
Yeah.
attention to, and the other ones I just let them go, just like
Right. So,
junk mail or
I
whatever.
think you could almost create a like an email system, and maybe Google has it where it's just, kind of like Facebook. You have to accept, you have to approve that you'll take an email from
Well,
this
in
person.
Europe, they have this now. Okay,
Oh, do
Europe,
they?
yeah,
Okay.
Europe, they have this authentication procedure on everything, and a lot of people have quit Facebook and whatever because the way my wife's German, her sister in Germany told her that a lot of people were changing their whole configuration with the internet, and with they're preferring WhatsApp over Facebook, and there's all these changes going on, and it's because now they're instituting that you have to co-sign anybody's access to your information. So you will have a step by step. Everybody that's using wants to access to your information, you have to give them a permission
Right.
or something. But that's retarding the whole thing, the free flow of information. Ken St. Clair mentioned that. Remember, he said that God forbid that this happens here in North America, because the only way we can assure that we have freedoms of information and flow of information is not to have an intervening wall there, because then who controls that intervening wall? Who is it? The government? So then, so there'll be who's going to police the police, or who's going to police the cybersecurity experts? I mean, it's just a string you pull on, and it gets really
It's a
hard to.
sticky wicket for sure. Sticky wicket for sure. All right, brother. What do we have up next?
Well, it's another great post from the Realcom IBCon, the floor, the vendor floor. This is a really good interview. It was just about 5 minutes long. It's the KMC's Vice President of Business Development, Scott Taylor, interview. And Scott does a marvelous job. He's a very earnest KMC executive, and he really knows his stuff. And what I liked about this was the concise extraction of information of what's new from KMC. I mean, because everybody's on a vendor floor. I mean, and we were on a mission to go around and interview people. But I mean, how do you know what how do you go to a booth anymore in these big shows and walk around and get the 5 minutes of important information that updates you on this vendor's incredible array of product portfolio? So, but what he did, we talked about the KMC offers one of the most, the industry's most comprehensive array of options that allow contractors to use the right sized and right priced software tool, namely the KMC Commander, for small to mid-sized buildings. But what was really cool was how he dovetailed that into the cost is so affordable that many contractors they're leasing connectivity versus providing service contracts. So
Yeah.
if you lease the connectivity, you're changing the way the game's being played. You're offering something new, and the primary thing that it does is you become the trusted advisor. You embed yourself with the customer, and then you get recurring revenue. So
Right. Well, and I want to comment on that. Good points, Kenny, all the way around. First, on our friend Scott there. I mean, he's a veteran, right? And I think when we go to a show like this, you see a lot of people that really understand technology from maybe an IT side, and they've got great products, but they don't necessarily understand the relevance to the industry. And I think that's what working with the traditional, somebody that's coming from our side, the OT side, really provides. They understand what's relevant and what makes sense and what doesn't. So they're not going to give you 9 million different things something will do if only 2 of them are relevant and will have impacting results on that. And Scott's a veteran, and KMC has a lot of veterans, as do a lot of the major manufacturers that are around. So I think he's right on it with that. What Scott was pointing out, and what KMC is doing, is the price point on the Commander. And again, we've talked about the race to the small space for quite some time, and democratizing the advantages of the technology, because it's something like the Commander is affordable enough that you can put it in a very small space, and then at the same time you can scale it up to a full-blown system if you want to. And so I think a market that opens up is one that our friend Larry Weber, used to be with Honeywell, is now with JCI. Hi, Larry. He's over in Asia now.
Hey, Larry.
He did a huge, brilliant guy, did a huge study for Honeywell, and he sort of realized that the service contractors, right? I mean, if you've got a service contract, that's gold. That's like recurring revenue, and there's a formula that for every dollar of service that contract you have, you're going to get X amount of add-on, and you're going to get X amount of equipment upgrades, right? So your business becomes very predictable, and these service contractors protect these contracts, with their lives, right? Because you lose a service contract, you're losing predictability in your business. So they were very risk averse. I know for many years I tried to sell service contractors like on building automation. They pushed away. They didn't want to take the risk if it didn't work. Now I think they almost have to, right? Because it drives your cost to serve down. People are expecting to be able to get that, those reports every month, and it just makes sense. And what Scott's referring to in the interview is the fact that because of the price points of the KMC Commander, instead of me coming to you, Kenny, and saying, "Hey, why don't we buy this?" I go in and say, "Hey, give us a 5-year service contract, and we'll put this in, and because we have this, and we'll be able to give you better service, we'll be able to give you reports and so on and so forth." So I think it's a trend we're going to see, and I think the really smart companies now are not just going trying to sell a solution, selling a product. They're going trying to sell a solution, and I think service contractors, uh, there's a tremendous market there because most of them, and more are, but most of them are not doing building automation controls. They're subbing it out, or they're working with somebody else. But I think with products like KMC, EasyIO, who we'll talk about in a minute, Proton Optigy, and some of these others, and Honeywell's light commercial, and JCI's light commercial. There's a tremendous market there. But I think, to your point, Scott did a great job of articulating sort of the value proposition.
Sure, and then he also isolated. He said, if you're going to integrate with a legacy system, then of course you got to go with Niagara because that's your option. That's a smart option. And the industry basically has evolved so that it's produced tools, and the guy and gal that's going to succeed is the one that uses the right tool for the right building application. And there's many buildings out there that need these applications. So it was a very positive, upbeat interview.
All right, big dog, what we have next, man?
Well, we got Contemporary Controls. They do not sleep. They continue to produce new products and make things easier. Took me a while to really catch up to this. And the Contemporary Controls new product announcement is that new EIGR series of gigabyte IP routers is now available. They introduced these a little while ago, but basically they had a very popular EIPR series of 10100 Mbps IP routers, okay? But this one here has taken it to the level. So the thing about them is that with all this desire for data and the bandwidth is limited, you got a problem with speeds. So the biggest thing that we take out of here is that the Gateway LX is part of the latest exciting addition to the product portfolio they have that speeds up and assures integrity of your network. So that was really cool. And then they also had a newsletter. So people forget the Contemporary Controls because they have kind of they speak softly and carry a big stick. They're global, and they got a neat plug in here for one of the things that they did overseas. That the Contemporary Controls plays a role in the Binhai Cultural Center, and then Tijuana is a thriving modern Chinese city that is a hub for innovative architectural design and equally impressive building automation support energy management systems. So congratulations to George Thomas and his team for putting out new products and then making those products impact in a global market. So well done, George.
Yeah, congratulations to Control Trends Hall of Famer George Thomas. And as our friend Paul Oswald said, man, when the tribal knowledge leaves the building, you're in trouble. And thank goodness that George is still part of the tribe and thriving. He's a thriving triber. So good stuff from those guys. And,
I like that, thriving triber.
A thriving triber. All right, big dog.
That could be the name of a group.
It could be, man. It could be, and they could do all their albums on vinyl, 180 gram vinyl, not this digital stuff.
I wasn't going to say anything, but you brought it up again, and I'll tell you, guess who's going to be the last person that you know is going to buy a vinyl record?
Well, you know why? Because I'm going to give it to you, buddy. I'm going to give you a turntable.
I remember in Germany seeing the first vinyl video. The movies were on these golden plates that were about this thick,
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I watched it, I was thrilled. I mean, I remember the first time I saw Wi-Fi turn a stereo off and on too. I was thrilled with that too. So I'm easy to impress.
Well,
But
hey, buddy, I tell you what, you better get ready, because I'm telling you, I shoot film cameras now, and now they got film video cameras. Those are making a comeback. So get ready, because we're going to be filming ourselves on those
oh,
old
no.
38 millimeter Super 8
Hey,
video.
I had I went through that phase where I dug that stuff, and I had a couple of them, and they just were the crappiest piece. They'd break. They were unreliable. The film would break. You'd feed it, and it'd break. You know, it was just.
I love it, man.
I got certified.
Just my kind of crazy. Just my
I think it
kind
was
of
in
crazy.
school, like sixth grade. I was in charge of it because I actually understood how it worked, and
You're the audiovisual guy.
and it
Why
was
does that not
crap.
surprise me? Why does that not surprise me, Kenny, that you were the audiovisual guy?
I
Yeah,
wasn't like completely. I
and
was
you're probably the head of the patrols, right? I mean,
nah.
making sure people cross the street, and
Nope, nope.
um,
I
the
was
Pittsburgh
doing
Mafia back then.
the patrols ratted me out for not waiting.
I
No I'm
got
kidding.
you. I
Now,
got
you remember that when the bus would stop, you guys they would have the white belts on to get
Yeah,
out in front of the bus,
yeah,
do a suicide halt.
yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Let's put an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old out and have him stop traffic. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, yeah.
I did do that for a while, but then
You
there was
smartened up. You said this.
uh,
They're not paying me enough for this, right?
pass.
Pass.
I don't know. Okay, well, the next post is again, we're talking about industries, like the building automation. We talked race to small space. We talked, several things and how they all layer on top of each other, and how there's a kind of a stratification. Certain products, can do A to Z, certain ones can't. They specialize in certain areas, and we're seeing EasyIO has now introduced the ultimate mini Wi-Fi controller that opens up a wealth of new opportunities. This actually came out of Johan Schockelrod's neighborhood there in Holland, and they do a great job. They got a good marketer out there. We'll talk about him at the very end of the post. But here we got it where the FT04 is being introduced. It's going to be an amazing addition to the EasyIO portfolio because it's the first product that is designed for a high performance small form factor controller specifically designed to deliver application that historically were difficult to achieve. In other words, if you talk about what you can use it for, you can do, it has, we talked about ported Niagara. Well, guess what? You've also got the same ported CPT tool and all the capabilities in this tiny little device that gives you 2 inputs and 2 outputs. And there's ways to get a floating output using the relays they offer. But this fits inside of a light, so you can take your light switch off the wall, put it in this controller. It's Wi-Fi connected to your router. It can Wi-Fi, create a network within your zone, but it can go to the internet basically, and it can put it in a room. We saw some incredible, demonstrations where it is Sun Tracker, where the EasyIO FT4 is connected to the web, which is given the sun movement, and as the sun moves across the horizon and affects the lighting inside of a zone or a space, this little bugger can track it and modulate your blind actuator to open and close. So I mean, it's real clever stuff. But and what we have there is we have a couple links to it. But basically, there's a data sheet that's available for download, and I think when you see it, it speaks for itself. EasyIO also kind of hit the summary. It was a newsletter post too, where they had another gentleman join the EasyIO team. Robert Swan joined EasyIO, and he's out of the UK, I believe. Yep. He's follows the setup of EasyIO Europe Ltd in the UK. We had the systems view, so we got the new system view Android tablets that EasyIO offers are a perfect addition to your BEMS system. They're available at 7-inch and 10-inch. Because of their slim and sleek design, they're ideal to mount in panels and cabinets. We have EasyIO's, we've already reported on this, but EasyIO's Gina Elliott won Woman of the Year, on the Woman of the Channel list. So Women of the Channel, there's a channel company out there, and as we met Rolling Oaks, and CRN, a brand of channel company, has named EasyIO's Vice President of America, Gina Elliott, to its prestigious 2018 Woman of the Channel list. These executives are recognized for their outstanding leadership, vision, and unique role in driving channel growth and innovation. So congratulations, Gina Elliott.
Well, congratulations to Gina and congratulations to Easy.io. Sounds like Lim Hu Chan is having more time to do some of his great inventions. We saw some great stuff in Manchester that he's got on the board. Seems like he's bringing those to fruition. Kenny, I tell you what, for our podcast listeners, podcast only, I'm sitting outside. I'm at the lake house and the boats are getting kind of crazy behind us. So probably not going to be great for the audio. I think, too, I'm getting texts from my wife. She's wanting to know where the heck I am. I think we probably better wrap this puppy down. Do we have anything else before we sign off?
I think it's going to be another Realcomm IBCom post, one of the videos that we did, one of the interviews from the floor. So, yeah, but
Good
you're right.
stuff.
Adios,
Good
amigo.
stuff. Well, listen, with that, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Eric Stromquist. He's Ken Smyers, the man, the myth, the legend. We appreciate you tuning in. Remember, be bold, stay in control, stay relevant, and go on vacation this summer.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed. All right, good job. You got that.